I wanted to make sure that I was doing, what it is that my heart was pushing me to do, what it is that my heart desired, and not letting kind of other influences come in and kind of shift what it is that I knew.
You're listening to the Academy podcast, the podcast for people who can but don't know how. This is where you get actionable steps to turn vague dreams into blissful realities. And I'm your host, Omoshola Victoria Wolabi. So let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Academy podcast. On today's episode, we've got a fabulous woman doing amazing things, Melinda Jackson. So Melinda is a social impact coach and the founder of the Difference Maker Incubator, as well as the International Youth Leadership Foundation. These are nonprofit organizations that helps children from low-income backgrounds and children of color gain global experience by exposing them to international travel, domestic cultural experiences, and leadership trainings. Melinda had a ton of experience working with local and international nonprofit organizations, as well as in the global supply chain operations for two multi-billion-dollar corporations. She is a member of the World Economic Forum's Global Shapers community. Her passion for the work that she does has led her to being recognized as one of the top 25 under 25 movers and shakers in her city, as well as the YWCA Woman of Distinctions. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Melinda.
Yes, thank you for having me, Victoria. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you. You do amazing work, and I believe for a woman who does this kind of, I call it a sacrificial kind of work, because being a social impact business is not easy.
Sure. No, absolutely. It definitely comes with its challenges, but as I've experienced it, the rewards definitely far outweigh the challenges. So I really love the work that I do.
Absolutely. Before we get into that though, in your own words, who is Melinda? Tell us a bit about you.
Okay, well, oh my goodness, there's so many things. So I think of myself as such a multifaceted person. I really have a ton of different interests. And I think it all really stems from my love of being able to connect with people. So when I think about who I am, I'm like, as you said, I'm a nonprofit founder. I'm a social impact coach. I'm a digital course creator. I put a lot of time and resources into creating amazing and transformational content that's going to help more people really feel like they can and take the actual steps to create change in the world. I love to travel. I love adventure. I love new experiences and, creatively solving problems and analyzing things. So I'm just super passionate and really multifaceted and just really love a lot of things about the work that I do. And then the people that I get to meet as a result, and then the amazing transformations that we see in those people and in those communities. So I think that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Wow, that's awesome. You have a lot of interests, which I also do. And sometimes you feel as though, am I doing too many things? Do I like too many things? But it's amazing to be able to weave them all together, to present your whole self to your clients and the communities that you serve.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. So you're into nonprofit and you have a social impact business.
Mm-hmm.
How did the idea for that come about? Why did you decide to go into that sphere of business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always even from the time that I was young, I've always wanted to do things to help people. My mom will tell you when I was I think this was maybe when I was in third grade, there was a opportunity to volunteer at a home here locally for sick children. And fortunately, they weren't allowing third graders to volunteer because I was just far too young. And I just would not take that as an answer. So I remember coming home and telling my mom, I'm going to write a letter to this volunteer coordinator. And I really want to be able to help these children and families. And, was just super passionate about, wanting to do something to make a difference. And the coordinator of volunteers for that institution was so moved by my initiative to to, and my passion for wanting to help, that she ended up letting me become a volunteer. So we did, fortunately, because I was too young to really interact with a lot of the children who were very sick, but I like planted flowers outside with my mom. We helped out with like meals and things like that. So like ever since then, I've always had this like drive to really want to help people.
Right.
And so when I thought about, what I wanted to do in the world, and there was, of course, an evolution like through my studies and thinking about, in what way, what ways do I want to help people? And, what are the talents that I have that lend themselves to, to certain things. So one of the kind of the main driving forces behind how I started my organization was really a experience that I had. I think I was about 17, and there was an opportunity at my school for the French class, the students in taking French, to actually go abroad and visit France. Right. So I was able to participate in that. We visited France for about 2.5 weeks. And that experience for me was completely transformational and really led to a lot of the subsequent work that I did. And, when I graduated high school, moved into, to college, I studied French language and literature. So that stuck with me. I moved overseas, actually moved to France for a while and taught English. So like all of these things were able to occur because of this experience that I had. And it was life-changing and transformational, and it opened up the world to me. And as I got older, and particularly when I was in France teaching, I thought more about the fact that experience that I had was such an honor and an incredible privilege, and not one that a lot of students my age were able to have at that point. And a lot of that just has to do with, how we fund our public education system here in the US. So not to go on too much of a tangent, but, our public education is funded, there's a portion that comes from the federal government, but the vast majority come through property taxes. So as you can imagine, it puts you at a real disadvantage if you live in a neighborhood where property values aren't high, because you're limited in terms of, the funding that you receive for your public schools. So I, lived in a suburban area and was very fortunate that my school had enough funding, or was well funded enough for me to have opportunities like this. So that bothered me. That really bothered me. And I thought, for what I was able to create, for what I was able to experience and create on that trip, can we replicate that? Can we duplicate that in a way that will allow us to help engage with students who, do not have those opportunities because of, where they live and what schools they go to. And in so doing, help to inspire them to kind of want to aspire to more, but also helping them to cultivate the skills that they're going to need to really be productive global citizens and to be successful in a global workforce. So those were kind of the pieces that came together for me as I was thinking about not just what the idea was, but why I wanted to do it, why I thought it was important.
Wow, this is amazing. And for you to have thought, this experience will be valuable for less privileged children is awesome, because a lot of us sometimes don't even think beyond our scope of influence, right? Like, okay, you grew up in a suburban neighborhood that didn't have that problem, but you were still able to think outside of your circle about children who may not be able to afford that. So how were you able to take that idea that you had and then create something that now serves children from less privileged background? How were you able to take that step forward from idea to actually getting it done in a way that serves that community?
Yeah. So after I kind of had this grand epiphany and decided that that's what I wanted to do, I think, the first step for me was really the decision, that clear decision to say, hey, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I want to do. I want to be able to drive equity in global education. And I think, this is a great first step to do it. That was kind of like step one for me. So to really get clear and to actually decide, this is what I want to do and I'm committed to it. And so then after that, I thought that was kind of like the learning phase, the research phase. So, I was looking at, are there other models that exist for this sort of a thing? What are different ways to get funding for what I'm trying to do? Thinking creatively about, how do I want to structure the programming? What is it going to look like? All of those sorts of things. And I kind of, took about 10 days and like furiously typed together like a 15-page business plan for how I kind of saw this unfolding. And then what I started to do after that was kind of beginning to actually talk about it. And I know that sounds basic, but I think sometimes, especially if you're like a visionary, when you think of something, it kind of just exists in your head and you're toying around with ideas. But I thought it was important to actually talk about it, and not just talk about it to people that I thought would support it, but also talk about it as if, it is the thing that I see it being now in the present. So talking to people saying, yeah, I have this organization that I'm starting up, and here's what it's about, and here's what we want to do. And, talking about it in a way that was, in essence, kind of manifesting it into the, onto the physical plane or into the world. Right. So talking about it and then finding people that were aligned. And then that's really where the opportunity came for me to actually, kind of take it from paper to the practical and actually start working with the students that the organization serves. And then I think, finally, after talking, after getting clear on it, after researching it, after talking about it with people and getting ideas and getting support, it was also, I think, about being open to opportunity and then recognizing when that opportunity came to me and knowing that those opportunities might look different than what I originally put together in that business plan. Right. So the organization that I run now, or the organization that is the International Youth Leadership Foundation now, is very different from like what was on that business plan. And part of it was being able to, recognize opportunity, take those opportunities to creatively shift and move and pivot and figure out what works and what doesn't, and be able to, create a well-crafted product service that really is helping to change people's lives. So that was kind of my process as I was working through, how I wanted to bring this to life.
Right. And you touched on something really important. I'm just going to go back there a little bit. You talked
Sure.
about getting clarity on your vision and then talking about it. So speaking it and then seeing it, basically, because I'm very big on mindset and manifesting things as well.
Absolutely.
And some people think this is just woo-woo stuff. So I want you to please expand on that a little bit. Like, why is it important to get clear on your vision, and why is it important to speak it before you see it?
Sure. So I think to get for me, clarity of vision was so important because I wanted to make sure that I was doing, what it is that my heart was pushing me to do, what it is that my heart desired, and not letting kind of other influences come in and kind of shift what it is that I knew, in my heart of hearts that I wanted to do. So I thought it was important to make sure that I kind of knew within myself, and not in such a way that you're inflexible, but knew, the direction and, the impact that I wanted to have, so that way I could better see opportunity when it came my way, or know when things weren't aligned. Because sometimes if you're not clear and someone's like, oh, well, I want to help you and I think we can do X, Y, Z, then you're like, oh, sure, someone wants to help, but you never take that extra step and think about, okay, there's this help available, but is it aligned with what I want to do? And then, of course, the speaking it, I'm, very big on that. Like, make it real before it's actually real. One of the things that I did to actually do that was I got a business card flyer in the mail. And I said, you know what, I'm going to make business cards. Mind you, I did not have the paperwork done. I just had this idea, right? So I didn't have any sort of like government paperwork to say that I was a legitimate organization. I barely had, I had just come up with the name for the organization. But I said, you know what, I'm going to get these business cards printed. And I had, Melinda Jackson, founder, executive director of the International Youth Leadership Foundation. And that, to me, brought it into the world in real time. And when I spoke about it, it wasn't like, well, I have this idea that I'm thinking about. It was like, no, I have this thing that I'm doing and here's what it is. And in that way, the beginning of it manifested itself in kind of a miraculous way. I was talking to a teacher. I had done a French presentation in her class, and she wanted me to come back to continue to volunteer. And I was just like, well, I don't really have the time for it because I was working for a corporation at the time.
Right.
And she said, well, is there a way that I can get you back into the classroom? I said, well, unfortunately, no, just because my schedule won't allow for it. But I've been working on this thing, and here's what it is, and here are my goals, and here's the, the benefit that I think it would have to students. And she said, well, I have students, so why don't you just work with my students? And I'm like, okay, great. And then literally 2 months later, I was standing in front of 18, bright-eyed students and, doing a 6-week program. And then we've been going ever since then. So I think because I spoke about it as, a real thing, and because I, took the steps to really solidify it, then I opened the door for miraculous opportunities to come my way for me to be able to put this out into the world. So I think really, speaking things and thinking of things as, as though they are, happening very much so in the present is a great way to just attract, the energy of, or attract opportunities that are aligned. So I am such a big believer in that. And I have to say, the life that I've been blessed to live is not a life that is governed by realism in any way. It's like I hope for big things and I create big things. And I think that's part of it.
Right. Now, the nature of the work that you do, because you take children from less privileged backgrounds and you expose them to international travel. You expose them to cultural experiences. You expose them, or you teach them, you educate them with leadership trainings. This is not cheap. This thing's expensive to run. How do you fund those?
Yeah, so the funding piece is a really critical piece, as you said, especially for these sorts of programs. So namely, kind of what we've been doing strategically, we have a lot of individual supporters that contribute to us. We have corporate sponsors that have contributed funding to us. And then, we've gotten creative in the past and done things like, done conferences where it gives us an opportunity, youth conferences on particular global issues. And that, gives us the opportunity to bring in funds that way. So it's always about, and I think that, with thinking about the expense of it all, there are some people that, would think, oh, well, is a program like that really worth it if it's that expensive? But it's like, no, it's like we have to, find, because I know the program is worth it. And I know that, the transformation that occurs within the student, or it really not necessarily transforming, but the kind of potential that was already in them that we just kind of help bring to the surface with the exposure piece and all that we do with the students is really life-changing. And, our students and parents say that all the time. So for us, it's about, yes, we know the worth of this and we know it's expensive, but we are always, finding people who support us, finding, corporations who are progressive, who say, hey, we want to be able to be involved in something like this. And then finding, different things that we do that are valuable that we can leverage to be able to get the funds to continue the program. So it's kind of always like a puzzle. So we're always putting pieces in place and shifting and, finding new opportunities that way.
Right. Awesome. Hey everybody, it's Amoshala here with a quick word from our sponsors. You see, when you decide to become an entrepreneur, one thing you do not realize you're signing up for is actually the amount of skills that you need to learn, especially if you're bootstrapping your business and trying to do a lot of things yourself. So things like building a website, social media marketing, photography, those are skills that you need when you're getting started as an entrepreneur. And that was what I was quick to realize when I started my business. But hey, Skillshare came to the rescue. With Skillshare, I was able to go there and take tutorials from people who have been exactly where I was, but are now experts in their field. So whether you're trying to build your website, trying to learn how to market your product on social media, or trying to improve on your communication and facilitation skills, Skillshare has got you. With Skillshare, you're able to learn new skills fast and effectively with step-by-step guided tutorials. And as a lovely listener, Skillshare has been kind enough to allow our listeners 2 months free of premium Skillshare. So to access 2 months free of premium Skillshare, click on the link below in the show notes. Now, I'm just going to touch on something real quick. So we're both big on manifesting and speaking things, right? You
Yes.
speaking it out there and manifesting it does not mean it's going to be easy or come without challenges. And I think that's
Right.
where a lot of people get stuck. So when they speak it and they start to see it and then the challenge comes, they feel like, oh, it doesn't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how are you able to overcome some of the challenges that you face in your business or your organization?
So I think part of it is recognizing what the challenges are and where they could potentially be coming from.
Right.
So what I've noticed is more than any sort of external challenge to what we're doing, some of the stumbling blocks that we've had have totally been because of limiting beliefs that I had around what it is that we can accomplish. So sometimes, when I was looking at, oh, I wonder why we kind of stumbled here, it's like, well, is that something that, you maybe put your full heart and effort into knowing that, yes, this is possible? Or did you kind of like tentatively fill out that grant application and, send it out with very tentative energy, just kind of like, well, I hope somebody, finds some value in this. So I think that part of getting over the challenges is recognizing where it is that they're stemming from. And, for me, I always like to look at, what do I think that I might be contributing to this? And is there a possibility that maybe my own limitations on myself are what contribute to some of these challenges? But then I think the other thing is being able to not only recognize those things, but then also being able to to pivot and be flexible. Like I said, my original plan for the organization kind of looks, it's similar in some ways, but the actual product now is very different than it was when I originally envisioned it. And I think that is a result of, meeting challenges and saying, okay, I know this is what we're supposed to be doing. We've already determined that this challenge isn't going to prevent us from doing what it is we want to do. So how do we pivot? How do we work around it? Who do we need to call for help? How do we set the organization up for success in such a way that this is not a regular challenge that we're meeting? How do we move things around in our organization? So yeah, that's kind of the strategy I've been using. First, looking internally, figuring out, what it is I'm contributing, or, what I might need to be doing better with the way that some of the challenges that we have are met, and then also figuring out, how do we need to move, how do we need to pivot, because giving up is not an option. I think that's part of it too, determining that giving up is not an option. So anytime we're met with, any sort of adversity, it's figuring out what's going to be the smartest, best way to work around that, and then to fortify our organization so that thing, does not continue to be a stumbling block going forward.
I absolutely love the fact that you ask yourself empowering questions, because a lot of us sometimes when we encounter challenges, it's questions like, why is this happening to me? Or
right.
if it's for me, then I shouldn't be going through this. So it's not for me, right? But you ask yourself empowering questions like, okay, how am I contributing to this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You check yourself first. And as the head of the organization, it's absolutely vital that you do that, because
Absolutely.
your energy will trickle down to the rest of your team if you don't figure that part out. So I absolutely love that you mentioned this and you brought this up. And that you're so right. That's one of the first steps to overcoming challenges. Ask yourself the big question, what am I contributing to this? And how can I fix me? And in return, that will fix the problem.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's so good. You're also a digital course creator.
Mm-hmm.
How is that happening? And what do you create courses on?
So as I've done my work, in this sector, I've been so blessed to have, a lot of people who come to me for advice, for mentorship, people who say, I love what you're doing and I want to start, something of my own, or, I love that you are so driven by your convictions and you're like doing things, but I feel passionately about things, but I just wouldn't even know how to put it together or what I specifically want to do. So I started to get more and more and more of that. And I realized that in my city, that's, the people that I have the most proximity to, but I'm sure, and even through some of the, the work with the global shapers, these aren't uncommon questions, and these aren't questions that are just exclusive to my location. So when I thought a little bit bigger about, okay, but how can I contribute more? I love the work that I'm doing with my organization, and I'm so excited to see that continue to grow and flourish. But I thought, is there a bigger responsibility that I have here to, help others who may be struggling to find their way, to find their voice, who may be struggling with navigating the nonprofit sector, or, are thinking about something along the lines of maybe a for-profit social enterprise, but are just kind of a little lost. So I decided that creating digital courses is an awesome way to get a lot of people learning at the same time about some of the things, some of the challenges, some of their options. Sometimes people just, they want to do something but have no idea what the options are.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to start creating like really robust, really transformational digital course content to, at varying price points to help people to embrace the power of their own voice and embrace their own power to be a change maker. Because I think that's something that we all have. I don't think that any one person is just, super exceptional and is the only person that can create that change. I believe that every single person on the planet has that ability, and they can give, from where they're at. It doesn't have to be giving billions of dollars, but maybe it's, making a meal for your neighbor or something like that. So I think we all have that in us. And I think sometimes that has to be activated and then guided. So my courses, if I could think of just a few words to describe them, would be to activate that like change maker in all of us, and then guide it toward, the ends that we want to see, the impact that we want to have. And digital courses are such a great medium to be able to do that. So that's why I've been, kind of moving over to that a little bit as well.
Right. That's awesome. And you're so right. Because we now live in a small world. What do I mean by that? It's the world is becoming smaller because you are where? You're in the US, I'm somewhere in New Zealand, and we're having this conversation. So it's amazing. I personally find that digital courses are a way to expand your reach and impact more people. So that it's really beautiful that you decided to include that into your business as well. So, Melinda, I'm just going to ask you for some wisdom here. For our listeners who maybe, number one, are passionate like you, they have it at the back of their mind to start a social enterprise or a not-for-profit, or even if they just want to maybe turn their gift or their passion into a course. What are 5 things you can give someone who is currently thinking about, okay, I want to start something that can impact the world. I just have a passion for people like you did. How can what are some things I can do to get started today?
Well, I would say number one for me is that clarity piece, right? So getting clear on, what it is that you want to see, what's the impact that you want to have. Sometimes I'll tell people, if you could wave a magic wand and maybe create something that would solve one problem, what would that problem be? Or if you think about things that you've even gone through, your own personal narrative, sometimes it's good to leverage our own stories and think about, okay, where in your life could you maybe have used some help? And maybe is that part of what you might create in this world, something that is going to impact people that are like you or like you were at one point in your life. I do have the privilege to talk to a lot of people like that who have gone through some hard situations, but really want to turn that around and lift other people up. So I think that clarity piece is going to be big. So I would say step 1 would be clarity. Right. And then step 2, I think, is the deciding that this is what I'm going to do and I'm committed to it. I think sometimes we might try something and we're kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And it's like, well, if this doesn't work out, it's fine. I'll just go back to whatever. But it's like, no, I think there's power in deciding that, yes, I'm going to do this. And I know there will be challenges, but I know that I'm also that I am equipped and that I can, seek help around me to be able to overcome those things. So I think decision is number 2. So making that decision that you're going to do it, it's going to be successful, and that you're going to be able to create the impact that you want to see. Number 3, I think, is going to be learn. So learn as much as you can, and not just about your particular area of impact, but learn about yourself. Learn about who you are. What are the things that you're really awesome at? Maybe where are some of the areas that you need help so you can, staff or have people around you that have that sort of expertise. I always say, find a guru. If there's someone that you connect with online who you find to be, in a position that you want to be in the future, or you really like their style, or you feel like they give, good advice, seek those people out. If they've got, courses or any other products, purchase those things and do so with the intention of, this is going to get me closer to where it is that I ultimately want to be. And then I think fourthly, I would say find your tribe. I think there are a lot of people, not only just in our immediate vicinity, but, across the world, who have similar passions, similar desires, maybe even similar stories, and want to help. So I think it's good to find like-minded people who you can bounce ideas off of, or who you can go to if you're feeling discouraged. And then I think lastly, I would say, don't be afraid to pivot. I think sometimes we might get so attached to a particular idea or a particular approach. And, as long as your eye is on the path ahead of you, don't be afraid to, maybe take a couple steps to the right or a couple steps to the left, knowing that you're still heading, in the direction of your dream, but not being afraid to say, maybe we need to take a little bit of a different route, or, maybe we need to look at this a little bit more intently and figure out what we might be able to do so that we don't have this particular outcome. So I would say stay open and stay flexible, and don't be afraid to make that change if you need to.
Wow. Thank you so much for those. Number 5 in particularly spoke to me, because sometimes we just get stuck on that one idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
We just get stuck and we feel, oh, okay, because this is how I started this, it has to stay that way.
Right.
So yeah, that's a good reminder. Don't be afraid to pivot. That's the one I'm taking personally away from this.
Oh, I love it. I'm glad it was helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Now,
Sure.
Melinda, you're awesome. You do awesome work. I personally relate to the work that you do with children from, less privileged communities. For a lot of years, I was a career advisor, and I got to meet these children in person during my travels. So part of what I did was I used to travel into different countries, speaking to NGOs and CEOs about how we could sponsor children who could not afford because I worked at a university at the time, our tuition. How are we able to get them to still attend, especially children with bursting potentials? So you do great work and you do amazing things. How can our listeners get more of your awesomeness? Where can they find you?
Okay, wonderful. So if you are looking for me on the internet, so they can find me at Mel's World Travels on Instagram. So it's spelled MELS and then World WORLD and then Travels with an S on the end. So that's my Instagram handle. You can also find me on Facebook, and it's just my full name. So it's Melinda Jackson followed by DMI, and DMI stands for Difference Maker Incubator, which is my premium course that I have, which we're actually getting ready to open enrollment for within the next month to month and a half here. So I'm excited for that. And so that's where you can find me. I've got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of really cool resources that are going to be coming out, like even in the next couple of weeks. So I'm excited to share all of that with you guys. And I'm excited to have, more interactions and more ability to help people to create the change that they want to see and really lead more purposeful and fulfilling lives as a result. So I'm excited to interact with you, and I hope that you'll come find me on the internet and let's have a conversation.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, talking about your expertise, your awesomeness, sharing your wisdom with us. I really appreciate that you decided to honor that invitation and come on today. Yeah, thank you so much, Melinda.
Yes, thank you, Victoria. I appreciate you having me. And this is an awesome platform that you're developing here. So I'm so excited to see all the lives that are going to be changed as a result of the work and the information you're making accessible to so many people. So this is exciting.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to put this out there to people who listen to the show. If you need help, that is why I bring these experts on. Please seek them out. You can find Melinda on Instagram at Mel's World Travels. You can find her on Facebook. Just Google Melinda Jackson, or you can go to my Facebook and find her from my friend's page if you're looking for the right one. She can help you get clear on what you want to do. If you have a passion for helping people, I think Melinda would be a go-to person because that's what she does. She lives that every day. And she's right. When you're trying to do something, find people who are already doing what you're trying to do. Don't reinvent the wheel, guys. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much, Melinda. And do enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for coming on. So there you have it. Thank you so much for listening. And for more content like this, follow us on our social media handles. On Facebook, it's at iCandemy, the Facebook page. On Instagram, it's at iCandemy. Or come say hello over on my personal page. On Instagram, it's at Omoshola Speaks. On Facebook, it's Victoria Wallaby. Feel free to reach out, introduce yourself, say hello. I love meeting you. And if you have any stories that you feel will inspire another woman to action, I want to hear from you. I really do. I love hearing from you. Send me an email to hello@icandemy.org. So it's hello@icandemy.org. And if you find this content valuable, please rate and review on iTunes. Leave a review. It matters to us so that people can find it. So like, rate, and review on iTunes, on Google Podcasts, and everywhere you listen to your podcast. Thank you.